So I'm going to call the meeting to order. I think we have started the recording already, so that's all good. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which is the minutes from the August 11th meeting. Are there any questions or comments about the minutes from August 11th, our last meeting? Okay, hearing none. Any, I would accept a motion to approve the minutes. Well, somebody needs to do that, I think. Andre,
I'll
you were
approve them.
okay.
I
Okay,
approve the
Brian.
minutes from August.
Okay, and I
Motion to approve.
need a second. I think I saw Andra trying to say something, but she's muted. She's seconding. Andra is seconding the approval of the minutes. All in favor, raise a hand. Okay, approved unanimously. Okay, thank you all. The next item on the agenda is announcements. The next our next meeting will be on October 13th. We'll talk about that in a second because there's a possibility that will be fused with the Climate and Conservation and Climate Outreach Commission by then, because there's a September 19th, 20th study session and business meeting. We'll have that on the agenda. So we'll have to, please put on your agenda tentatively October 13th. I don't know for sure that that will be on, but we'll be in touch once we know. There was a staff update from that Mary sent in advance, and the big news is that she's retiring, but she sent a lovely note to everybody. So I guess Mary's been with us since January, since Stu Green left, and she's not a climate and energy analyst, but she's been really giving it her heart and soul, providing us the support. She's been really following up in a great way. I get multiple emails from her in between meetings where she's following up on specific issues, asking questions. So I wonder if we could have just a resolution or a note of appreciation and thanks to Mary for what she's done. She's really been terrific, and I've appreciated her. Can somebody say something nice, and we can use that as the basis for a resolution of appreciation?
Well, I'm happy to say something.
Okay, Rick,
because she really stepped up when Stu moved on, and she was tremendously helpful to me during my time as chair, and I imagine she continued that tradition while you took over, Bob. As you said, she followed up on a lot of things that I had never expected that she would, and so it's been wonderful to have her, and I wish her all the best.
Great, thank you. So that sounds like a resolution. Do we have a second for that? Caitlin, okay, great. So all in favor of a great round of applause and appreciation for Mary, raise your hand. Okay, and she'll see this and she'll know what to do with it when she takes the minutes. I'm sure she'll be smiling as she does. Thank you, everybody. Next item on the agenda is council update. Tanya, do you want to give us an update from the council this last couple of weeks?
Sure. So one of the big issues I think that a lot of the commissions are looking at is this commission reorganization process, what it looks like. And what we did at the I believe it was mid-August meeting, so since this commission met last, is to identify that we wanted to have a deeper study session to better understand kind of the rationale around which commissions are going in which directions. Are there commissions that are being essentially decommissioned, or are all of them becoming what Joe Lassard is calling the management advisory committees? And so it's not all committees or commissions know what their fate is. And I think you referenced that a little bit, Bob. How do we do this combination, which is what it looks like the two climate commissions are going to do. So what we've asked staff to do is to come back to us at the study session in mid-September with a more detailed plan and kind of rationale behind the changes that are being made, as well as a transitional plan. So we know that's not necessarily the case for this commission, but for some of the commissions, they have been working on policy recommendations for the council, and they are transitioning to become management advisory committees. And so we want to make sure that if an entity that is transitioning is bringing policy issues forward, that there is still a way for them to do that and close that up with the council before they shift how they're operating. And in particular, the two climate commissions, bringing those two together is going to require its own process. It's the only commission, from what I can tell, although it might also be happening with forest lands and wildfire safety. But these two climate commissions have to come together in some sort of a process. It's still not clear to us how current commission members put their name forward to be considered in the new structure. So all of those details are things that we want to see come back forward from staff before the council takes up any decision making around it. So we're hoping to answer, the questions that are still outstanding for commission members at the study session before taking up any sort of a vote the next day. So to answer your question, Bob, about we're not quite sure what's happening, we want to know what's happening before the council says, passes or approves some form of reorganization. So that's the big one. If there are questions about that, we should probably take those on before I talk about some master plans and a water treatment facility and that sort of thing.
Yeah, let me just fill in a little bit on that, because I looked at the look ahead before the meeting, and I see that the September 19th meeting, as you said, the study session has on the agenda the resolution establishing the advisory committee. So that will be the time to talk about that. But then the very next day is the resolution establishing the advisory committees, the appointments to advisory committees, and amending affected ordinances. So that seems like, I don't know whether there's an intention from the city manager and the mayor to take applications for the committee that's not yet been formed before that. I'm not sure how they'll get names in order to be able to appoint the advisory committees. If it's really just discussed, that day, it seems like it may take an extra couple of weeks to collect the names. Do you have any sense of that, of what will be that? Yeah, you did say, figuring out the process, and the staff will come forward with a transition process.
Yeah, it's my understanding that we're going to be talking about the process of reappointments and establishing that process. It will be outside of the resolution, because the resolution will carry on and this transition will be a singular time, a singular event. So I don't think that we are going to be in any way able to reappoint anyone. The mayor's not going to, we haven't put out a call, and there's a lot of applications that would be coming in. So I don't see any way that actual appointments will happen that day. But that's why we want to see what a transition plan looks like. All of our commissions are in limbo right now. They're not quite sure what they're supposed to be doing or what it looks like or what that process is. So we want that all nailed down between that study session and that business meeting, so that people know what to expect. Our city recorder knows what the task looks like, what that structure looks like, and the mayor knows what's coming at her, and the council knows what's coming at it in terms of the next levels. Okay. But what we will make sure is happening is that the commission chairs are informed about whatever process that is, and that we get that information out to existing commission members.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tanya. I also want to make sure that the two students, one from the high school and one from the university, who submitted their applications back in May, I believe, and have not really received any indication that they're going forward. I've been keeping them informed, but I want to make sure that they know when they should submit another application if they need to do that. They're, right. Of course, as being students, they won't be students forever, so they're kind of losing their,
that's the hope, right? Well, those are exactly the kind of questions that we're trying to get answered, and there are some additional elements of that overarching description of the commissions or the new committees that we're also working on that we haven't had a chance to work through. So one of those elements is actually, do we want to just simply have the ability to put student members on commissions, either as ex officio or not? It's all different depending on the commissions whether they can vote or not is different. And so, there are a number of those kind of conversations that are still outstanding that would apply to all of these new committees. So there's a lot that we have to dig through at that meeting, but certainly clarifying if there are outstanding applications, do they have to reapply? Those kinds of questions I think are very, very important. Deadlines, when would we need to see them? When do they have to get to the mayor so that she has time to respond? That kind of thing. So we need to get that all planned out so that everyone knows what to expect and how to go through the process. And then also so that the different commissions or committees know what to do with their upcoming meetings. What does that look like? It's all been there. We haven't gotten to enough of a level of detail for council to actually approve this yet, because we don't know what that pathway looks like.
Okay.
There have been a couple of other developments. There are several master plans that are coming in front of council. We received the presentations on those at our council meeting this past Tuesday. The comprehensive sanitary sewer collection system master plan, the Talent Ashland Phoenix or TAP intertie master plan, and a stormwater and drainage master plan. Those are all of those drafts are in, or those the finals that have been put forward for acceptance by the council. Those are expected to come back to us, I believe, at the mid-September meeting, so that we can approve them. But the information about those is out. If anybody has, I know we've been working on different master plans in this process, but if there are any comments to come to council about any of those 3 master plans, we would want to have those comments either by individual commission members, is probably the way that it would have to be. But if there are any concerns about anything in those master plans, now would be the time to bring that forward to the council before the mid-September meetings. In addition, with the supplemental budget resolution that we approved last on Tuesday includes the grant from the state of Oregon. The $1.3 million for Briscoe School has now been brought into our budget. I'm following up with Scott Fleury about the HVAC system upgrade, because of course a big part of the advocacy around getting that funding was to fuel switch Briscoe School, but I know there were some outstanding questions about electrical capacity and that sort of thing at the building. So I'm following up with Scott, but now would be a good time for this commission, since you all advocated for that process. It's starting to move now because the money's come into the budget. So now would be the time for there to be confirmation that that facility is moving from fossil gas to electricity.
Which
So
staff member is responsible for that?
Scott Fleury.
Okay.
Public Works oversees the maintenance of Briscoe School.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, you mentioned water master plan, TAP master plan. What was the third one?
The third one was the
It was, she said sewer,
sanitary
stormwater.
sewer collection
Wow,
system.
thank you.
Master
Yeah,
plan.
it wasn't water, Rick. It was the stormwater. Stormwater collection and drainage, separate from
Yeah.
the sewer.
Okay.
Because the water master plan
Yeah.
was approved a couple of years
Yeah.
ago.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the water master
Got it,
plan is
thank
already
you.
in place. And there was discussion about the next planning process, which is the conservation plan that is going to be coming up next, that we're going to be looking, where they're going to be integrating the latest climate modeling information for water. So that's kind of coming up next. There also in the supplemental budget resolution was a request for funding for the HVAC system in our IT area, because our servers are in need of an HVAC upgrade to keep them from overheating. So we confirmed at the council meeting on Tuesday evening that system is already electric, and it will, and the repair or the new system will also be electric. So keeping an eye on making sure that we're not replacing fossil gas appliances with fossil gas appliances until we can hear back from Scott and his team about that overarching structure that we've asked about, that this commission has asked about, to make sure that we've got plans in place. Otherwise, we run that risk, of course, of being in an emergency kind of crisis situation and not having the option of fuel switching at that point. But so that was sort of an unexpected expense, but we've confirmed that it's not a natural gas appliance. So that's all good news. And then finally, this commission has been particularly interested in the water treatment plants, and particularly the Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure's Envision program that the council has directed staff to move forward with. At the meeting on Tuesday, the council approved the a contract amendment that will take us through 100% design that includes the ISI Envision program. So that process is continuing to move forward in terms of getting final cost estimates, final numbers, and seeing exactly what those Envision program elements will be. So that's something else for this commission to probably be keeping an eye on, given that you've spoken to council in the past about the need to make sure that this new facility is as energy efficient as possible and has as much of its own renewable energy source as it can have. So that's moving forward as well. I believe that that's what I have for an update.
That's all?
That's all.
Wow, thorough.
Good, thanks. Thanks, Tanya. Any questions for Tanya on any of that? I mean, I kind of asked questions along the way, but I was holding. Okay, thanks. Announcements from other commissioners. Anybody have other announcements to share? Nope. And reports from representatives of other commissions. We have no other commissions represented. There's a public form that says public form must be submitted via CPC contact form in writing by 10 a.m. the day of the meeting to be included in the minutes. We have one public member here on the Zoom. I don't know, Dean Silver, would you like to say something to the commission? Hello, Dean Silver. We're asking if you would like to say something to the commission since you're participating in the commission meeting. Okay. Seems like the answer is no. So let's continue on to the new business. So the Ray normally presents us with his master tracker. He did put it in the packet. We could go to that and look at it ourselves without Ray guiding us. But I think what I'd rather do is on the possibility that Ray will come back, it will come in and hit at the tail end of the meeting. I'd like to defer that to later in the meeting so that he can walk us through it if that happens. So let's continue on to the Clean Buildings Home Energy Score update. Just a very brief update from me, I guess, on that. I did include in the packet the promotional flyer that was prepared by the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. I can share that on the screen. Let me see if I can find it here. There it is. There it is. There we go. So you should be able to see it. It's done by the folks at the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. It's something that will be used by realtors as they show houses, or they work with sellers and with buyers. So there's both a buyer and a seller aspect. And this explains what the program is, and then it has information from the seller's perspective and the buyer's perspective, a little bit about how it works, and then a little bit more down at the bottom right hand corner to get more information about it. We had a conversation at our last meeting with the realtors just a couple of weeks ago, a week or two ago. I'm going to stop sharing so you can see everybody. We had a conversation about whether we should go ahead and start, whether the realtors want to go ahead and start promoting it, whether they start printing these and start promoting it, or whether we should wait until we have more assessors that are licensed. And we now have one assessor who has gone through the training here in Ashland. I can't remember who it was. Sorry. but we do have one assessor, and we have one other person who was thinking about whether to renew his license for doing that as well. But the realtors were pretty emphatic that this is a classic chicken and egg problem, and they think there's a big advantage to go ahead and starting to talk about it, starting to explain what it is. And because, you know, assessors aren't going to necessarily come forward and go through the training and incur some of the costs until they see that there's actually some demand for their services. So they were very strong that that's what we should be doing. So that, I think that's really what their intention is, to start in the next, I guess, this fall selling season, or buying season, depending on your perspective, to promote the home energy score. I guess, yeah, so I don't have any more information about that. We're supposed to, the folks from the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, we're going to schedule our next meeting, I think, in a couple of weeks, but we haven't gotten a doodle poll to try to find the right date. So that should be coming any day now. I've been in contact with the CEO and the government affairs person. But they seem to be quite enthusiastic about it, and the realtors are starting to talk about it, and so they'll have this promotional brochure. I should say that you'll recall that we had a presentation to the City Council the 2nd of August, and there is on the council look ahead an item for September 20th, the business meeting, Rogue Valley Energy Score Program Resolution. And it has Tom McBartlett, the head of the electric department, making the presentation. Mary was trying to figure out exactly what that is, and Stu was trying to figure out what that is, and Tom was trying to figure out what that is. And I think what that is at the end of the last meeting on August 2nd, there was a little bit of a question. Would their council like to express its support? And Joe Lassard, the city manager, said that he would like to bring a resolution back and ask for the city's support for the program. The city council's official blessing. This is certainly something that you know, has legs of its own. The Rogue Valley Association of Realtors is proceeding with it, and we've been supporting them, and the electric department's been supporting them as well. So, you know, we'll have to remains to be seen what that resolution is exactly, but I'm hoping it'll be relatively non-controversial since there's not really any weighty policy matters to consider. I don't have a whole lot to update on the home energy score program. I think it's actually going pretty well. I was actually quite relieved when the realtors said that they thought we should just proceed and start to build the market and not wait for assessors, because I was feeling that, oh no, we've gotten ahead of the market here by starting to promote it. But I think that's exactly what we should be doing. So I'm feeling better about it. Any questions about? We've talked about this every meeting, so I don't. Brian, do you have?
I mean, if we circulate this, do you think realistically people can get appraisals?
There's one person who could get the actual home energy score. Well, I mean, there's one person who can do the home energy score. There is within the city of Ashland, there's Dan Cunningham, who does home energy audits. It's not a home energy score itself yet, but he's going as soon as he has some time to be able to go through the certification. It's not really training for him because he's been doing it all along. He's going to get licensed as well. I haven't followed up with him in the last couple of weeks to find out if he's done that yet. So I think realistically it will be more difficult to do it, but then you'll have people kind of calling around and saying, yeah, where can I get this? And that'll be kind of a buzz. And I think that's the idea of the realtors, is that once you start getting people asking about it, where do I do it? Where do I do it? Where do I do it? Then the people will start to say, well, there's actually a market for me. And again, the idea, I mean, it could be anybody could get cert, could get licensed, but ideally, or what we expect is it would be people who already are licensed home inspectors and are involved in the real estate transaction process. The other issue really is for non-real estate transactions, because this is a home energy score that anybody could do at any particular time. And the state is also developing for rental units as well. So I think that we're kind of in the early stage of this. I should say there is one update that I heard from Corvallis Corvallis, as you know, Corvallis and Bend were both also exploring a mandate following on the experience of Portland, Hillsborough, and Milwaukee. And there was a city council meeting in Corvallis a couple of days ago for the second reading of the mandate to have a home energy score. And what the city council decided to do was pause it and put it out for a voters' decision in May, in an election in May, the May election. So they're gearing up now to try to provide information to the voters of Corvallis on whether they want to do this as a mandate or whether they want to use it as a voluntary program. Our realtors have pointed out that ours is a voluntary program, but it's a promoted program because we have a collaborator, which is the realtors. The other jurisdictions don't have that partnership with promoters. So a voluntary program without a promoter, without the realtors, on board and actively promoting it, is really what we have now in a particular jurisdiction. Anyone could, anywhere, try to get a home energy score done. It doesn't really require any kind of city support. Any questions, Caitlin?
Well, kudos, Bob. This is wonderful to hear that the realtors want to move forward in the program and get the market up and running, and the city council, someone go to city council. And I do think there is a benefit to the official motion from the city council, is that, maybe that can be used to establish the start date, so that as we, we're moving forward, able to look back and track the success and say, okay, how, what percentage of homes went through this voluntary program in the first 6 months or the first year, how many new folks came on board who could provide the service, and, just to be able to do those metrics and understand the success of the program. I think that is going to be helpful.
No, I think that's right. I wish that we'd been better prepared to have done that, to have been ready for the resolution at the end of the session that we did on August 2nd. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks, everybody. The next item on the agenda really is what I put on the agenda. We've had these 3 documents: the work plan, for the next year, the 2022-2023 work plan. I don't think that I didn't do it. There were no changes from the last meeting. The specific look ahead, and also the report card for the last year. I don't think we need to talk about those meetings necessarily, but I thought that we should have a preliminary conversation about our expectation that, that work program will somehow need to be joined with the CCOC's work plan, with new members of the Climate and Environment Policy Advisory Committee, all of the members, to try to set a work plan. So I don't have clear out, and I think it's probably very premature to try to figure out with very much specificity how that might happen. It'll sort of depend on the members of the new committee that get appointed, and how they want to take it, and what instructions they get from the city council. But I guess I wonder if it might be useful for us to spend a few minutes in this meeting to talk through that a little bit, and how we would see, maybe presenting presenting the work plan to the new committee members, because my expectation is that we've all been involved in this for some several months now. There'll be new committee members as well. They'll have to kind of get up to speed, and then take it forward, and hopefully there'll be more capacity, because the idea is that it'd be actually a bigger committee, is what I've heard from the city manager. Are there thoughts on how to do that in the most orderly way?
It seems like, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Andrea.
I was going to say, it seems like we would want to see what their work plan is and look for overlaps. And it might be just that this one becomes expanded. But, I'm not, because I'm not, we'd want to do like a side by side with their work plan and see where the overlaps are.
Right. Yeah, I should say, I meant to say when we were talking about, when Tanya was talking about the council updates, that I did put in the packet, remember we drafted a note to the city council at the end of the last meeting as input to that process. I never got any acknowledgement that that note was received. It certainly didn't make it into the packet of the city council that time. So I don't know whether that's being used as input to the drafting of the specific resolution for the CPAC. Tanya, I wonder if that's something that would be useful for you to follow up on with the city manager.
Yeah, yeah,
'cause
we,
had
it did
yeah.
come through. I know that
Okay.
I was CC'd on it, so I saw it come through. And I think there may have been one of the other commission members also sent it in, sent in that language. And so I had a conversation with Joe about the language, and I think part of what he's looking at is that the more general languaging he thinks includes every sort of the detail. He gets a little concerned about putting so much detail in, because then somebody might say this element is outside of that list of detail. So we've kind of had a little bit of that conversation back and forth. What I've been looking at in particular is making sure that it's clear that the focus of this work is climate. And so there's some language that I think might still be in that descriptor that is much more broadly around the environment. So that's one of the things that we need to do I need to do is to look at the very latest version, because there's been a lot of versions floating out there. To look at the very latest version from Joe and see what got picked up and what didn't, and follow up with him about those elements. And I'll do that before our next conversation.
And was there a conversation? I know there was a conservation and climate outreach meeting, I think last week. Is that right?
Yeah.
Were you able to, was there something from that meeting that is germane to this conversation?
The difficulty with that meeting is that they didn't have a quorum, so they were not able to make any decisions. But individual commissioners who had thoughts, I think they had some conversation about it, and then they decided that anybody who had any particular input should reach out directly to the council.
Okay.
So that's kind of where that particular piece is, and it's a big part of why we went forward and with the mayor's appointments, so that we could make sure that we're not having these quorum problems as we're trying to finish up this reorganization.
Right. Okay. I mean, I'm feeling that in terms of the work plan, we've all felt a little bit, and not hamstrung is maybe a little bit too strong, but a little bit tentative as we're waiting for this, this change to happen. We've had this home energy score has been the one beneficiary, I get, or not beneficiary. It's just it's not dependent on that so much. So we've been able to make quite a bit substantial progress, even though there was that uncertainty. But we've made much less progress on some of the other things, and many of the items depend even more than the home energy score discussion depends on the city staff, on with the fact that we've got a vacant analyst position.
One other thing, if I might, Bob, to just follow up on the climate analyst position, because we know we have a lot of holes right now in our organizational chart, including in our HR department, and that has definitely impeded the ability to get a climate policy person on. But one of the things that I've been talking with Joe about is the fact that there's all this federal funding, and this is one of the things that came up in the Conservation and Climate Outreach Commission in particular, was that with these new federal funding programs coming up to fund climate resilient infrastructure, we need to make sure that we have the capacity to chase those programs down and find out what we qualify and see what we can match up in terms of the projects that we want to do here locally. And it's difficult to do that when we don't have a climate policy analyst on board here, because there's a lot happening at the federal government level. We deal with a lot of different kind of infrastructure, and we don't want to have that slip through the cracks. And he agreed with that and said that he would go back and kind of look at the the order of priority that they have for these different positions, because we definitely want to position ourselves to receive as much federal government support at this point with that investment as we can.
Right. Yeah. And that support could, there's two different channels for supporting residents who are doing energy retrofits. One is as individuals, they can do it themselves, and the other is through, entities that can do that. So we need to be in good position with our electric department to be channeling that. Okay.
Well, and the other piece too is that a lot of what's coming down in the Inflation Reduction Act is our tax credit based elements, and so educating the community around that is going to be an important part, I think, of this work in the next couple of years of how can people do this work around their homes and take advantage of these incentives. And so it really is critical that we get this position filled, and we've all known that since Stu left. But I think that it's kind of coming to a point now with the need for making sure that we are able to track this new funding and these new programs from the federal government.
I wonder if that item, that you just mentioned, Tanya, and what others think, should be an element of our work plan. It's not in our work plan. That sort of, it tends to be the outreach side, the conservation and climate outreach side, to do the outreach to the community and let them know that there are these opportunities to do things that are consistent with the Climate and Energy Action Plan. Do it with, at substantially lower cost than would otherwise be the case. So I guess that's part of the things that we should maybe keep a separate list as the people who convene as part of that new committee take the items that are coming from CPC and the items from CCOC and forge a work plan.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and clearly there's going to have to be some sort of a planning process that creates a new work plan out of whatever elements are the highest priority. But I would suggest that makes sense to include that in that listing, even if it's not already in the work plan of either of the commissions.
I agree with everything you just said there, Tanya, and it makes me think about how, really for the work that, the commission committee moving forward does to make it effective, it has to be properly staffed by the city and funded. And so that does seem like a really key top priority item to say, how can we make this entity moving forward be functional and effective? What kind of structure do we need in place? What kind of staffing? What sort of budget? And here's this federal resource available. So how can the city set itself up to take advantage and go after those funds too? And then that all comes down to implementing the work. To me, that should be front and center. And in part of the work plan, I don't know if it's the work plan for us per se or for the staff, but to build out that. And then perhaps, I don't know if you call it like a fundraising plan, but that, that plan of attack, what of sources of funding are available for the city? What's our likelihood of getting it? What sort of resources would it take to apply for it? And maybe this one position needs to be completely filled before the city can even pursue that sort of assessment.
Part of the difficulty is that that matching process, Caitlin, involves not only all this new funding that's coming down in all sorts of different programs through the federal government, but also having that strong understanding of where are those elements in the city that we want to improve, and where are those fixes, those investments, and that unless the person who's hired is already involved in the city of Ashland, that's quite a learning curve that we're going to have to acknowledge. It'll take several months for them to understand what are those things we might want to match up to these funding sources. And so I think no matter how we do this, I expect there could be a role for the commissioners to help the city, at least in the interim, look for opportunities. I asked Scott Fleury in our last conversation on Tuesday, are we keeping it? Are we sort of monitoring and watching for these things? And the answer is yes, they are. but they're also short-staffed. And they have to keep everything operating while they're also watching for new grant opportunities. And so I think a conversation around how can various commissions help with that, where there's an intersection there, at least in the short term, while we're getting the new person in and up to speed, I think is probably something to look at.
I was just going to add that certainly on the transportation side, we're missing opportunities as we speak for federal funding to increase and improve the effectiveness of the bicycle and transportation network. And that's regrettable, obviously, but unless the city's staff, in particular the Public Works Department, is not able to take on new tasks, we're going to be locked out of those grants. And it's regrettable that we're facing the problems that we are internally at this particular time, and we hopefully can come out the other side and recover. But every day is another day that's lost in terms of the grant program deadlines and all of that. So it is unfortunate, obviously.
Yeah, I've got a couple of comments to make as well.
Yeah, please.
I want to support both what Caitlin said earlier, and I'm sure there's other comments, because all I've heard is things that I agree with so far. The two specific items I'd like to address are, I supported this reorganization of the commissions because I felt that the sheer number of them was too much of a burden, both for staff and for council. But I haven't yet heard discussion at the council level, and maybe because I just don't listen to all of those meetings, about how the council is going to more productively engage with the policy committees that are being proposed. Because that's one of the problems that we've had in the past, is there was a one-way 10-minute thing every year, and no discussion. Everything had to be left for squeezing it into an already overfull council set of agendas, whether it was study sessions or business meetings. And so as part of this transition, I'd like to hear how things are going to be more effective than they have been in the past. And the other problem I'm seeing is all of this, and it's been sort of touched on in previous comments, is the lack of continuity. As I think I pointed out before, our work on CEP has been delayed in major ways over and over and over again. And I'd hate to see something that I had hoped was going to make our work more efficient actually cause this major reset where you basically fire everybody that's been working on it, and then bring a new set of people together, and then we're back where we were 2 years ago, no, 3 years ago, when this the Colony Policy Commission was brought together, with everybody trying to get to know each other and setting goals and just starting all over again. This isn't any way to run a railroad.
Yeah, well, I think I agree, and I think that's why it's so important to keep those, the work plan and those basic documents, and keep them ready so that they're, we're not starting entirely from scratch, even if some of the people will be different, and hopefully many, if not all of this group will apply for the new committee as well, so that there'll be some individual memory. I agree with you.
And I'd like to remind the council that this is on its own timeline. It's not like everything else. Climate change is happening as we speak. It's not something where we can kick the can down the road and, oh, we'll pick up the pieces later.
Anything else? Any other comments? Okay. Well, it looks like Ray is not going to be able to join us. I can go back and do can pull up his master tracker. And find it. There it is. Let me put it on the screen. Unfortunately, I didn't have a conversation with him to see if there's, let's see, screen share. Can you all see it? Very small. How about that? Okay, so if I can channel Ray, I guess here's the master plan, stormwater and drainage master plan. He already has it on the tracker. Adoption planned on 9/6, and Tanya told us that it wasn't yet adopted, but will be adopted at the next meeting. So I guess those two things, that's the sanitary sewer and the stormwater and drainage master plan, and then the tap master plan. I'd have it, and that we've already provided some input into that. The next thing on the list will be, I haven't heard anything more about the electric master plan. So I think it is probably time to check back in with Tom McBartlett on that. Rick, have you heard anything from Tom on that?
No.
No, yeah. I know that he's told me, last time he told me that he was going to be taking that up after the fire risk assessment. So and then there's the transportation systems plan, ODOT approved funding update still in this year. Gary, have you heard anything about that?
I know that ODOT's preparing a master work program for those entities that will receive funding. So the work program, as I understand it, would be designed to conform to the climate-friendly rules that the Land Conservation and Development Commission adopted. So that should lead to a pretty effective and expansive process for that planning.
Okay, and I do see the last bolded item in Ray's list is the facilities master plan, the council study session planned on the 17th of October. I didn't notice that on reduction of natural gas in city buildings. So I guess that is the result of the discussion that the council had with you, Rick, back in March about the priorities. So hopefully we'll check back in with Scott on that. Okay. That's our agenda. It's a short agenda today. Gary?
Oh, I was just looking back at the facilities plan or thinking about it and wondering if there is some draft of that document that's kicking around in some department, presumably Scott Fleury's, and whether there may be an opportunity for our review in advance of that document going to council.
Yeah, when I talked with Scott back in May, I think it was, he said they were going to start working on that. He was going to assign it to a team. They were going to set up a dashboard to record the existing situation in each of the buildings, somewhat like the water dashboard that's set up for the reservoir and tap, I guess, and TID. And that's what Jason Regner talked to us about last time, but he didn't actually show it to us. So I don't know if it's actually up and running yet. I think there's, if we have action items, I think the action items are really following up with Scott on a couple of things. I think we talked about the Briscoe school question with HVAC, and also the maybe this natural gas in city facilities. So I can check in with him and report back to the next meeting, unless maybe Rick, now that you're back on the commission, you want to take that up.
Oh, no.
Okay. Okay. All right, so I'll take them on myself. 2 items. Are there other action items?
Well, there's a couple of conversations that started earlier, and And of course, it might be hard to generate enthusiasm with all this uncertainty about where we're going with this organization. One was, Andra, you and I have been talking about Eugene. We haven't talked in some time, and so I'm wondering about that. And then Caitlin, you and I had exchanged some emails about offsets, and I hadn't heard back, and I'm just wondering whether you want to engage on that, or what the status is.
I do. Let me, I'll follow up with you, Rick. I think it slipped off my radar there. Yeah, so I'll follow up with you on the offsets.
Great.
And can I suggest that it not just be offset, and that may be a shorthand for that you guys know what you're talking about, but also the valuation of the emissions that in order to come in within the target, the goal for the steep reduction of emissions to zero, net zero. How we should value that the purchase of those offsets if we have to actually purchase offsets instead of. So I know you said offsets, but I'm really focused on the valuation question. Andra?
Yeah, so I have a meeting with Nick Caleb from the Breach Collective tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock, and I put forward several questions to him. He says he has answers to. Yay. One was, can cities tax utilities? One was the issue about, can we use health and safety as a mechanism for banning future natural gas? And the other question was code variations. Anyway, I put together some questions for him. So he and I are going to meet tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock. If anybody else is interested in being in on that meeting, you can let me know. I set up the Zoom meeting with him, and I'll be talking with him more in depth about an approach that we might be able to take here in Ashland to ban future expansion of natural gas, ban natural gas for new construction, any new construction in our area through a permit. Through permit requirements, I guess is how they did it in Eugene. So, and you guys are familiar with what happened in Eugene. I have not heard anything. I know they are getting ready to discuss, and it's probably happening this month, about their commercial, what they're going to do for commercial construction, because that's has a different set of needs, I guess, if you will. And but of course, they're building their residential went through. So anyway, that's where I am with that. I would have had more. And then I'm thinking after I talk with him, I'll have a better sense of, and I'll put together something for the next meeting, whatever that might look like. I know I don't know. It is strange being in this kind of like semi limbo space. And I do hear what you're saying, Rick. It seems like we have some urgent things we really want to get moving and we really should be starting on, and then they're kind of in this limbo. It's like, oh, okay, well, we'll wait and see. But anyway, I'll put whatever I can together after I talk with him to see, what we might be able to further, what we might be able to propose or take to the council. And Tanya, I'm kind of thinking that if something were to be, if we were to come up with some sort of proposition, that maybe you would be the one to put it forward. And Rick, when Rick and I talked, we talked about putting, having like you, me, and Bob, maybe presenting some background information to the council to start with. And I'm not sure how that would fit with the council meeting and that sort of thing, but having some, because I did notice that with Eugene, they did do quite a bit of kind of pre-education of the city council before they put forward the final proposal. So it was like some presentation of information. Then there was quite a bit of discussion about the proposal that was put forward, and then kind of the tweaking of how they finalized their whatever their final proposal, and then they went ahead and went forward with it. So and there was, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember now, that I mentioned about that they had some public meetings, because there was some public education as well in that process. So, I'm kind of thinking that that might be how we look at it or how we go forward with it.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think at whatever point this commission has to be put in front of council, I'm always happy as your lead.
I can't understand you.
Yeah,
You're
it's
breaking up.
Can you hear me now?
It's still
It's
kind
a
of,
little better,
So-
kind of garbly.
so- Yeah, kind of gargly. Are you gargling?
It's getting better. Um,
It was great before. It was terrific,
Shoot.
Can you do sign language?
I couldn't read it if she did.
Me neither.
exactly.
Anyway, I think I got the gist that said you would be
Yeah.
be the person to help to be a part of that, putting that forward to the council, right? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Okay. It's probably good enough. And so don't have a lot more information on that right now, but hopefully, I mean, after my meeting with him tomorrow, and I'll also ask him if he thinks there's anybody else I should talk with. Rick did give me a couple other names to follow up with, but I thought I would start with Nick first, so stay tuned.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, if you'd like me to listen in on that, send me the link.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thanks.
Yeah, you might
Sometime-
have some, you might be able to ask some clarifying questions when he talks about those questions that I came up with, so.
Well, and besides this focus on what the city might do, there's a lot of other context within which this effort is embedded. And so I think that's more what I was potentially going to contribute.
Okay.
Is this any better?
Much
yeah.
better.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, I left and came back in. No idea why it's getting better. But I just wanted to follow up behind Andre's question about, what does this commission do? Because I think in spite of the uncertainty that sits around this reorganization, there are a couple of things that I think are pretty solid. The first is that there will still be a standing climate committee. That's the direction that this committee is going in. And that its primary goal and function is going to be to help the city implement the CEP. And so with those two elements together, I wouldn't suggest holding back on anything that you're continuing to work on. Whatever's got the most momentum will probably, come out of your work planning process as a high priority. But I haven't seen anything that indicates that the scope or the charge of this group will change fundamentally, because both of the commissions have implementing CEP as a major part of their process, and that's really what the description that we've been working with has been, to maintain the focus on implementing CEP. So, I think I wouldn't pause and slow down on anything, given that that pathway seems pretty solid.
Thank you.
Great. That's super helpful. Okay. Yeah, a good reminder, because that is the basis, that the fundamental point. Okay. So now I have 4 action items. So I've got 2 that have to do with talking with Scott Fleury, one having to do with Briscoe School, one having to do with the city facilities, natural gas planning update. A third one is valuing carbon emissions through offsets for the 2030. And fourth is conversation about what's going about, well, with Nick Caleb, about pathways towards banning gas connections in new construction. Okay, great. That's all I've got. As I said, I think it was a short meeting. We could probably talk for another hour and a half if you all want, but I think everybody would be appreciative of an early ending. So if there's nothing else, I'd adjourn. Yeah, Brian, is that to say something or to?
I just had an administrative question. Is
Yeah.
Stu's old job posted, or is that all on hold pending hiring an HR person?
Well,
We
I mean, I've
don't
heard-
know.
Yeah, we don't know.
You don't know?
We don't know.
Right now, Sabrina, our deputy assistant or our deputy city manager is the acting HR department lead. So there are some positions being advertised, but we don't have the capacity there, and we have a lot of vacancies. And so they're being put forward in a prioritized way. And that was the conversation that I've been having with Joe Lassard about getting this position up higher in the priority list because of the opportunities that are coming from the bipartisan infrastructure bill and some other federal funding that we don't want to make. We want to make sure we don't miss out on the opportunity to bring in some of that funding. So, but that's what the process looks like right now. Is we don't. The HR department is part of the vacancy problem that we have.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? If not, I'll say good evening to everybody and hope